parliamentary seats.
Hello, I'm Egon Kosu with the Business News. Labour says it'll introduce laws to limit the amount of interest that can be charged on credit cards. That's if it wins the next election. Now, under the proposed changes, nobody would pay more in interest than they'd originally borrowed. It's a case of good news, bad news, really, for ALDI. It's had record sales in the UK and Ireland last year, but profits have dropped 17% to around £211 million. It's because of the fierce price war between supermarkets. The boss of Uber has apologised for what he calls mistakes and has pledged to appeal against London's decision to revoke its operating licence. The city's mayor, Sadiq Khan, says Uber is putting unfair pressure on Transport for London with an army of PR experts and lawyers. Okay, listen to this. If you're a female boss, you're likely to earn, on average, around £12,000 less than your male colleagues. That's according to research from the Chartered Management Institute. The figures also show that the gender pay gap is actually worse for bosses than the rest of us. Okay, well, I'm joined now by Francke, who is the boss of the Chartered Management Institute, and she joins me now. Thanks for joining us. Why is the gender pay gap worse for bosses, do we think?
Well, it's because we have something called the glass pyramid, which means that women are forming the majority of junior managerial roles, but they're slipping off that pyramid as you get more senior. So whilst we have 2/3 women at the bottom in the low-level managerial positions, we only have 1 in every 4 bosses being female at the top. And the higher up you get, the wider the pay gap is.
I've got to say, there's always a level of astonishment that in this day and age, this is something we're still having to discuss. How do we tackle that particularly pernicious pay gap then?
Yes, well, I think there are a number of things we need to do. One is we need to recognize that it exists. So people that say, been there, done that, we've ticked that box, I mean, this data shows that's simply not correct. I think the second thing is we need to recognize that it's those little things that get in the way often of the bigger things. So the offhand remarks about women, for example, not being ambitious when they have children, those are contributing to a culture that penalizes women on the big things like pay and promotion. And then the last thing we need to do, which the UK government is doing now with this new legislation, is get transparency. Companies have to publish their pay gaps and their plans to address them.
But speaking about transparency, I think the figures are that only like 77 out of the almost 8,000 companies who are supposed to publish their pay gaps have actually done so. Why has this happened?
Well, obviously, those early adopters are being very brave. Companies have until April 2018, and we're going to see a lot more companies going on the government website between now and then. So clearly, companies have to get their skates on and get this information out in the public domain, and their plans to address it.
Anna, thanks very much indeed. Let's check in with some other business news now. The British computer chip maker, Imagination Technologies, says it's reached a deal to be sold to the Chinese-backed firm Canyon Bridge Capital. Now, this makes it the latest UK chip maker to be bought by a foreign investor. Britain has to boost power generation by around a quarter if it's to meet demand for electric cars and electric heating. That's according to Scottish Power, which says much more investment is needed to handle the rapid charging of car batteries. Unilever has agreed to buy the cosmetics firm Carver Korea for about £2 billion from a group led by Goldman Sachs. Unilever says Carver is the fastest growing skincare business in South Korea. Let's check in with the markets. Yeah, not great news from the FTSE bank stocks, particularly being hard hit there. In Germany, the DAX is up. A lot of encouragement taken from the results of the German election. Over